調子はいかがかな、ドクター。
Since the operator's name is long, I would simply refer to her as Nearl. Nearl is a 6-star operator that specializes in 1v1 duels while dealing armor-piercing physical damage or true damage. She falls into the Dreadnought Guard archetype. The Dreadnought archetype itself is known for its dueling capabilities. Typically, brute forces its way into their fights by utilizing a massive attack to go through armors and be able to last against fights with their massive health pool. Her first talent, Brave the Darkness, allows Nearl to deal 80% of her attack as true damage to enemies in the 4 adjacent tiles, and inflicts stun to them for 3 seconds after being deployed. If the last deployed operator is a Casimir's operator, the true damage is dealt twice. Her second talent, Daybreak, allows Nearl's attacks to ignore 20 to 23% defense. Her first skill, Flaming Edge, expands range into 1 times 3 tiles, while significantly increasing attack and attack speed for an infinite duration. Her second skill, Night Scouring Gleam, massively increases attack for up to 27 seconds, and gains up to 4 layers of shield after being deployed. A shield layer nullifies 1 instance of damage. When the skill ends, Nearl will automatically retreat, and redeployment time will be increased by 25%. If the last operator deployed before Nearl is a Casimir's operator, the redeployment time will not increase. Equipping the skill applies a passive effect where Nearl herself does not use deployment slots. Her third skill, Blazing Sun's Obeisance, greatly expands attack range and massively increases both attack and defense for 25 seconds. Then, immediately summons a Blazing Sun on a deployable ground tile within the 4 adjacent tiles of Nearl, dealing a decent amount of true damage to enemies around it, and stunning them for 3 seconds. When Nearl attacks enemies blocked by Self or the Blazing Sun, attacks are converted from physical to true damage. All numbers are assuming Nearl is at her peak operator stats and is equipped with the DRE-X module. The first value means the target is not being blocked, and the second value means the target is being blocked. Let's break down Flaming Edge. Your best skill option if you want Nearl to hold a lane with high sustained DPS. The skill is very straightforward. You wait for the skill to fully charge, and Nearl automatically gains an extended range and greatly increased attack and attack speed for an infinite duration. This skill is most likely why you clicked on this video. Nearl's S1 is the strongest guard skill version too, beating Palace's S1. But of course, let me give you some context and the pros and cons. If strictly accounting ground targeting guard skills with the highest average DPS, then nothing beats Nearl's S1. Boasting a peak of 2520 DPS, it beats the peak 2455 DPS of Palace's S1. Not to mention, DRE-X module has a maximum of 28% defense ignore for Nearl, which Palace doesn't have. With such a high amount of DPS, it doesn't matter if Nearl can only attack 1 target at a time. The enemies will die fast enough, unless we are talking about hordes of enemies that charge at once, like on stage H9-1. With the extended range, Nearl can do wall hack shenanigans, which allows her to defend multiple lanes at once. She is also able to do spear and shield tactics as she can position behind another operator. The DPS combined with the defense ignore also makes Nearl S1 be capable of dealing with boss enemies. Granted that you have pre-charged the skill before the boss's arrival, but of course it's not always sunshine and rainbows. One of the biggest downsides of this skill is its SP cost. Even at M3, it still costs a whopping 60 SP to activate. So unlike Palace's S1, which is always ready to use, Nearl's S1 has a long wind-up time. Another downside is Nearl being a Dreadnought herself. Dreadnought stats work against trying to hold a lane for a long time. They have 0 arts resistance and low defense, combined with S1 having no defensive buffs or any survivability boost. It is a struggle to keep them alive. Next is how it utilizes stat increase, such as attack and attack speed increase instead of an attack scale modifier. This means that stacking more attack and attack speed on Nearl will just cause diminished returns. Or in other words, Nearl equipped with S1 do not synergize well with buffs. Luckily, she is a guard, therefore can take Axe S3 like a champ. That's a good horse right there. Let's break down Night Scouring Gleam. Your best skill option if you want to burst down a priority target. Simply deploy Nearl on a priority target, and she would deal huge amounts of physical damage if not outright killing the enemy. Aside from having high amounts of burst DPS, the skill also provides shields which nullifies instances of damage. This is very powerful against elites or bosses with slow attack speed. As you can see here, Nearl didn't even take a single point of damage from Mudrock. The skill also has a passive where Nearl herself does not take a deployment slot. Therefore, it can be an emergency heli drop anywhere when needed for extra damage. Due to Nearl's very long redeployment time, the average DPS of this skill is actually quite pathetic, only peaking at 6 to 34 average DPS, while 746 average DPS if used with another Casimir's operator. So if we are strictly talking about damage, a similar skill to Nearl's S2 would be Dreadnought Scotty's S2. Scotty, equipped with S2 and DRE-X module, has a higher burst DPS of 2704 and average DPS of 1229. Average DPS is almost doubled because Scotty's redeployment time is reduced to 36 seconds thanks to her module.
Actually, Scotty is not much stronger because she does not have a defense ignore passive.
This of course depends on the amount of armor the enemy has. Here is an infographic for a quick comparison. I already listed the other pros and cons of each operator, so you know the other things you get aside from the burst DPS listed against various armor values. Against 500 armor, Scotty wins. Against 1000 armor, Scotty loses slightly against Nearl's burst DPS. But remember that Scotty can redeploy fast, meaning, if we are strictly looking for damage, Scotty still wins. Against 1500 armor, this is where it gets a bit tricky. Sure, Scotty clearly loses, but again, she can redeploy fast. However, there can be cases where you'd want to squeeze out as much damage as you want against a specific enemy, where Nearl could be the better pick. To summarize, if you are strictly looking for damage, use Scotty's S2. However, if you want the utility provided by Nearl's S2 on top of its damage, then it can be the better option. Let's break down Blazing Sun's obeisance. Nearl's bread and butter. Your best skill option if you want Nearl to burst down enemies or a boss by dealing high amounts of true damage. As soon as the skill is activated, Nearl gets the range expansion, attack increase, and defense increase. This would mean that when the Blazing Sun is summoned, the true damage that it causes will take into account Nearl's buffed stats. The tile where the Blazing Sun gets summoned will be based on the enemy paving distance to your base. So if you are trying to target a boss, there can be cases where you need to adjust where Nearl is facing to limit her attack range. Else, it is possible that she can get distracted by nearby enemies. The Blazing Sun is fairly tanky. It has a fixed 6000 maximum HP and peaks at 600 defense. So ideally, try to make the Blazing Sun tank the enemy or boss's damage for Nearl. If you aren't aware, true damage never gets blocked by shields and ignores enemy evasion buffs. This makes Nearl equipped with S3 an excellent operator at bursting down bosses that boasts high evasion rate. Although, remember that Nearl can only convert her damage to true damage if the target is being blocked by her or the Blazing Sun. This means that fighting Andoane can be troublesome for her as the boss cannot be blocked. With an initial SP of 25 and SP cost of 40 at Mastery Rank 3, the skill can be treated as a heli drop skill. 15 seconds of wait isn't exactly long. It is the same case for Silver Ash's S3. Overall, an absurdly strong skill that can deal up to a total of 60,000 plus true damage. In general, due to Dreadnought's extremely high base attack, you'd avoid using a flat attack buff. For example, Bard Scotty's S3 has the highest flat attack increase currently in the game, yet if converted into percentage, it can only provide up to 43% attack increase to a moduled Nearl. That is not taking into account Nearl's own attack buffs yet. Dreadnought's HP is also very high, but their defense is on the low end. This makes them synergize well with shelter buffs, as it directly cuts damage received by percentage, technically granting them very high EHP. Nearl's S1 is a good skill for lane holding, but Dreadnoughts only have one block by default. This means that Nearl needs the assistance of other operators to block enemies for her. Nearl's S2 states that it will not increase Nearl's redeployment time if the operator deployed before her is a Casimir's operator. While any Casimir's operator works, the most notable would probably be Gravel, as she is a defensive fast redeploy operator. Also, Gravel's module could further reduce Nearl's redeployment time whenever she deploys. When using another Casimir's operator with Nearl's S2, try to sandwich the enemy between the two operators. So in case the other Casimir's operator got killed or retreated early, Nearl would immediately block the enemy, preventing any downtime from DRE-X module's added trait. If Nearl is blocking an enemy before activating her S3, the module's attack scale damage increase would apply to the initial hit of the Blazing Sun's summoning. Not exactly a super strong synergy, but worth noting. How to boost Nearl's damage optimally? Luckily, Nearl is a guard and can take Ark's S3 buff like a champ. Here's the boost Ark's S3 can provide for each skill. S1 gets times 173 boost, S2 gets times 179 boost, and S3 gets times 181 boost. Just note that Ark's S3 would instantly deplete all of Nearl's S2 shields, which can lead to an early retreat. While S1 still gets a decent times 153 boost from Warfarin's S2, the other skills have too much innate attack increase that Warfarin's S2 is not worth using anymore due to diminishing returns. In this case, simply use high-tier weakening effects for Nearl's S2 and S3 like Suzurin's S3 or Gnosis S3. Let me teach you a lesson. Overall, Nearl the Radiant Knight is a great operator that can perform many roles. Whether you want her to hold lanes, burst down priority targets, or be a source of massive amounts of true damage. Should you try to pull or build Nearl if you get the chance? Yes, absolutely. There aren't many reliable sources of true damage in the game, so having another source is a great addition to your arsenal. Probably an unpopular opinion, but I would say Nearl is worth getting to M9. All of her skills are pretty much top tier. If I were to give a priority list, it would be S3, then S2, then S1. And that's it for now. Like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe for more content.